Business doesn't have to be difficult, it doesn't have to be hard, and it isn't. What do you think makes business hard? People. Yeah, we do, yeah. It's our emotions get involved. I'm a massive believer in emotional intelligence, EQ, if anybody's heard of it. I've actually done one dissertation on it, I'm doing a master's on it, and it's absolutely fascinating if you're a geek, how having a high level of emotional intelligence can make you a better business person. So my last dissertation, I had a very small sample size, there was only 14 people, and there was two professional sports people, very high in the game. There was an RAF fighter pilot, and then the rest were business people, and very successful business people like that. A couple of, about 4 or 5 multi-millionaires. It was very interesting that only one person knew what emotional intelligence was, had heard about it before. A couple of them said, yeah, I know, what is it? Is it how clever you're out there? I didn't do very well at school. And literally that was the way they thought. But what was interesting is that every single one who was a success had high levels of emotional intelligence, even without knowing what it was. Does that make sense? So they didn't know they had it, but when I did the questionnaires, and we were asking them about certain questions that would find out if they had high emotional intelligence, every single one, without fail, had it. Now, does anybody know what the 5 sort of key drivers of emotional intelligence are? Self-awareness, so you know what you're good and you're bad at. Self-regulation, you can stop yourself from being good or bad at something. Empathy, knowing how the other person feels, which is really sort of interesting because of what Adele was speaking about before. You know, understand how everybody else is and see if you can sort of adapt your way in how you are to sort of help them. Communication skills and social skills. So how you communicate and how you are in a social setting. So you can imagine as a business leader, they're going to have very good communication skills. They're going to have very good sort of social skills. They're going to know what they're good and bad at. Like, I know I'm not a very good manager, so I've got to delegate. You'll know what you're not very good at. That's why you recruit the suit. So you can see why emotional intelligence is integral to becoming better at business and being a good business person. It also happened, which is very, very interesting. So the fighter pilot and the two guys, one was a professional boxer, one was a professional cage fighter. Guess what they had low levels of? Empathy. Interesting. Because I spoke to my mate, little Abdul, who was a world champion cage fighter, and he said, I won't do the accent because I'm shit at doing Afghani accents. But he basically said, if I start caring about him, I'm going to get hurt. And Rob, my fighter pilot mate, turned around and said exactly the same thing. If I care about who he wasn't a bomber, but we were asking questions like that. If I actually drop bombs and I'm worried about them, obviously you're going to, a little bit. He said that I'm not going to do my job and things can get missed. So your job role will determine what you're hiring, what your drivers are. But if anybody wants, I'll chuck some really good sort of names of book titles at you if you want. There's a guy called Daniel Goleman, wrote that on emotional intelligence. I think it's just called emotional intelligence. It's an awesome Goleman, Goleman. He didn't come up with emotional intelligence, but he's like the daddy, if you like. He was the one that first came up with it. There's another one I want to talk to you about called the Talent Code. Anyone heard that one? You've heard that one. Brilliant book, absolutely legendary. And that talks about what makes you good at something, and it's effectively doing the same thing over and over again. Has anyone heard the 10,000 hour rule? You're meant to do something 10,000 hours and you're going to become good at it. It's actually not 100% correct. It was the chap who said it said do it with purposeful practice. You need to do it 10,000 hours with meaning, and then you'll become good at something. And then it's just been stolen and diluted down and down the line, and now somebody thinks if you do something 10,000 times, you're going to be playing for Liverpool Football Club or something like that. It just doesn't happen like that. It's got to be purposeful practice. So the Talent Code is a really good one. Habits, Charles Duhigg, that's a very good one. And that just tells us again how to do the same things over and over again with, guess what guys, structure. You will become better at it. There's a really good, in the Talent Code, he talks about something called the process of myelinization. Right, so again, it's a neurological, it's what your brain does, and it gets you better at something. So, when Albert Einstein passed away, he was one of the most famous people to leave his body to medical science, so they give him an autopsy. And they found this sort of white gunk, this like film around parts of his brain. And what it was is you've got these synapses in your brain, and an electrical impulse is just sent out, and it tells you from your brain to your arm, pick your arm up, cup of coffee, whatever. What this myelinization does is it acts like an electronic sheath, and it conducts that electronic impulse, so it goes faster, 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 so you do it quicker. Has anybody played sport, football, cricket, rugby, tennis, where somebody seems to have so much time on the ball more than you? Yeah? But they can't have more time than you because you've got the same amount of time. Just they make the decision quicker. I always remember we were playing for Horden, which was quite a reasonable level. There was myself and a couple of, I was at number 8, blindside flank, or outside flank for you rugby guys. And there was a former Welsh international playing at fly half. Right? He was 40-year-old, considering I'm that age now, it wasn't. He looked a lot older than what I did, put it that way. He had a little pot belly, and we couldn't get anywhere near him. And the two guys next to me were like racing with bits. And we were out there, and he'd dummied us, and he'd send me that way, he'd send the other mate over that way. He made us look like amateurs. But he'd done the 10,000 hour rule. He played rugby at such a high level with guys better than we'll ever be. So when you get a couple of colliery lads from County Durham trying to take him out, we didn't have a chance. But it was the myelinization process that made him really good about it. So he was just doing the same thing over again. Right, big buggers come and pass it. Big buggers come, right. It was just the same thing over and over again. You have to do this over and over again. Recruit over and over again. Inductions over and over again. Motivation, understand the theory, put it in practice, do it over and over and over and over again. Guaranteed you will get better at it. You've just got to actually start to get good, or you've got to start to get great. Makes sense? Awesome. Right, I'm going to pass over to Adele for the next section. So if you don't mind, put your hands together again for Adele.
So this next section is the first 3 months. You've recruited, you now have your new member of staff. This is where it starts to get interesting, I would say. What would you say, we've got a new member of staff, what would you say, can somebody just knock that? Thank you. What would you say is important in terms of your documentation, your procedures, that at this stage you're going to want to have in place? Personal development plan, yes. Individual learning plan, also known as. Anything else?
Work contract.
Contract, yeah. Any others?
Induction day.
Induction day, yeah, perfect. Any more?
Job role.
Health and safety training.
Job role, health and safety training. Perfect, really good ideas. Role profile is the first thing that they should have, job spec, yeah? Because if we've got no job spec, how do we know what they're responsible for? Job spec, we're going to go through in a little bit more detail. I think you've got an example in your book. Yes, you have, I can see it. It'll start with your key competencies, and then you'll have your roles and responsibilities. Leave it open to a degree, always have in there something like any other reasonable request from your manager. So it'll allow you to really bulk up that role, because I can guarantee somebody will say at some point, that's not part of my job role. Following a reasonable request from a manager is though. An induction plan. We've also got a copy of an induction plan, a very, very basic induction plan. And your induction plan ideally should at least map out week 1. Ideally though, if you can do something similar as that, map out as much as you can, as early as you can. Again, let's always think about short-term pain, i.e. get this bit done, but actually that's going to buy me back a structure for the next 3 months. Skills matrix. You do have a copy of a skills matrix, yes?
Yes.
You just perfectly turn on that page. You can be my apprentice any day of the week. Skills matrix, you need your skills matrix. Your skills matrix your role profile, I should say, will sit in your skills matrix, and that's where that's developed from. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. An individual learning plan, development plan, whichever thing you want to call it, that's also going to be formed. And setting expectations. When I'm saying setting expectations, very much like what you said, handbook, a contract, they're your expectations. You're going to turn in then, you're going to look like this is what I'm going to expect from you, this is your role profile. They're your Billy Basic documents. I've had some people come to me and ask me what's the most important information that I pull together and what type of things should I be looking at doing, because it seems like a ginormous task. What I would say to you is there's going to be the essentials, and then there's going to be the nice to haves. It's up to you, and it will be dictated on how much time you have, how much time you are prepared to give it also, but you'll undoubtedly have your must-haves. These are your must-haves. Yeah, so if you haven't already got these, we've given you quite a bit in terms of a template to start with. Make sure that you get these things put into practice. And your probationary review document, which I also believe you have a copy of in there. Yes, you do. So they're your must-haves, really, guys. Starting with your role profile. Key competencies at the top. As far as I'm concerned, I've bleated on about it, I'll bleat on again. They're your real key stuff. They're the stuff in the attitudes, and they're the values, and they're all the good stuff that you guys spoke really passionately about trying to drag out from people. So that's your competencies sit at the top. We've already, when we were thinking about recruiting, we already started to think about that, because you understood what you wanted your company to say about you, and off the back of that you understood what that role needed to look like. Key responsibilities, that's dead straightforward, isn't it, really? Do you need them to process rent? Do you need them to meet and greet people? Do you need them to give an exceptional service? These are the kind of things that you're going to put in there, day-to-day responsibilities and tasks. But like I say, try not to be too specific. If they're responsible for growth, rather than saying carrying out valuations, talk about business growth, business development. Don't make it too vague, and that it could be such a huge spectrum and I don't really understand what it is, but also don't confine it too much, because you will be met at some point with, doesn't say it in my role profile. It's a really simple document. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. It doesn't, it needs to be understandable. It's an agreement in effect. At the bottom of our role profile, you see there's a signature page. I get that completed on day one. The day they sit with us, I've usually given them their role profile prior to them starting, as I do with their contract. On day one, I don't want them sat on day one reading through a load of documentation. Have you read your role profile? Are you happy with it? And is there anything on there that you weren't expecting to be doing? Like when I've said you'll cook me breakfast every morning, apparently that's not meant to go on there. So just make sure that they're happy with everything that's on there, and get the signature as well, because what sometimes you met with this doesn't say it in my role profile, it absolutely does, and you signed here on the first day to have it. We spoke at lunchtime about my flaw, my development area, my hatred is definitely paperwork. I love managing staff, and I love coaching, and I love development. I hate the paperwork to support it. It's something that I've had to find a love for, and I have, through bad experiences. So poor experiences have given me a love for the paperwork bit, because I've sat in a one-to-one with somebody and had to hear from them, knowing it was absolute nonsense. I didn't get enough training. I've sat with them and looked at them and went, you didn't get enough training. So we're into month 2. I've pretty much spent at least an hour a day every day with you. We've talked about this, we've done this, we've covered this, and I'm sat looking and going, the penny's going to drop and they're going to agree. And then I'll go, I obviously didn't sing in, I can't remember covering that. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. They walk out of that one-to-one or probationary review and they've left you with a big list of things to do. It's the worst feeling in the world, because instantly you have an instant dislike for this person, which is not very nice. You also know that their integrity isn't what it should be, and you also know that off the back of that it's going to mean a lot of work that you've already done with them. But because you didn't evidence it the first time round, you're going to have to do it again, and it's awful. I've learned from that mistake and done my paperwork to support the training and development, and filled out my probation review and done my probation review and got them to sign it. Hated every minute of doing all these documents and so on, scanning them in, uploading them to their profile, and we use a system called Breathe HR. It's basically an online cloud-based HR portal where you can set up people with a profile. Every employee has a profile. They log their holidays on there. You can upload company documents. So if you wanted a library of company documents, they're there for every new starter. You can access them from anywhere, so it's really, really good. But it's arduous, and you've got to save your documents on there to the library. One.
Is that Breathe?
Breathe with an E on the end. Yeah, HR. It's up to, I think, 50 employees. It's about 50 quid a month. It's good, very, very good. And it's being developed constantly. So each time I go on there, I'll notice a new feature. Like you can now invite your staff members to one-to-ones. You can record your one-to-ones on there. You can schedule your next one-to-one to remind you. You can put probation review reminders in. So it manages a lot of the process. It doesn't do it, unfortunately, but it manages a lot of the process for us. When we find something that does, we win it. So yeah, in terms of the probationary review, you need all of these documents in place. I've sat also, after having that type of review with somebody, I've then thought, right, learn from my mistakes, done all those documents, sat down again and had the same conversation, because we're managing around about 50 members of staff at the moment, but we'll have lost 50 members of staff at some point in time, I imagine, when you look at the recruitment over the years. And I've been met with this a couple of times. I only once ever got met with that, and I got to fall in love with paperwork, because the next time I was met with that, all right, okay, I thought you might have said that. So, remember when we did this, and this is your training document, and it's your signature on the bottom? Yeah. Oh look, we ticked off learning objectives also, so I know, as well as training it, I know you understood it because I physically saw you do it. Let's have a look at this little statement. Really enjoyed today's training session. Feel like I'm really good at this. So what's happened? Head goes down. Okay, yeah, so am I going to see you changing? Yeah, okay. Do you need any more training? No, I'm all right with that. Fantastic. Go away and get on with it. It's the most satisfying thing ever. And what you'll find is, I think we talked about this, they'll go out and they'll kick the drawer shut and the paperwork will go down hard on the desk. It makes me feel brilliant when that happens, because I just think, yes, you will never do that again, which is fantastic. It's your employee's first document, as I said, one of the first documents that they should have. So we move on to an induction. An induction should be firm and should be clear, setting expectations. Now, there's nothing to say you might map out an induction plan for 3 months, and actually they might have met their learning objectives for everything in month 2. That's fine. Likewise, you might have learning objectives set which aren't met within the first 3 months. That's also fine. What it allows you to do, though, is it's your review document to allow you to understand how much of the content have they learned and what do you need to work on next. There's nothing wrong with extending a probationary review. It can be disheartening to a member of staff if they're not expecting it. If you manage them properly, they will expect it. Because at month 1, when you have a review with them, and you kind of go, well, month 1 in, how have you found things? Yeah, I've loved this, this and this, fantastic. We're on the same page because you're brilliant at it. Is there anything you'd like to work on more? I feel like I'm really struggling with this. Again, brilliant, because I agree, and this is what I've put in place for month 2. So it's just absolute. Can somebody let them in, please? Again, it's just, understanding. It's giving you the structure to allow you to focus your resources where they need to be focused. We also need, in order to get your induction plan, which I'm sure you'll lose the will to live with this, because I definitely did. This just about sent me off the edge, if I'm being completely honest, didn't it, John?
Yeah, it did.
And then John every now and again decides to rewrite them, which is always fun. The part of the Be Better. Written policies and procedures in a company handbook. Your company handbook is really a place, I would say, you go to for things that doesn't change a great deal. It's what you expect from people in terms of their dress code. It's where they can find the policies and procedures. Some people like every policy and procedure in the handbook. It grows though as things change. So, just have an understanding. We had a really lovely one drawn up at some point, and we've made it much more digital so we can add to it as things change, basically. Your training documents, including documented training objectives, which is what I've just talked to you about. We have a really simple form which will list the staff member's name, the date, who their trainer was, because don't forget as well, the best thing you can do is delegate that. If you've got a member of staff who you know is very good at something in particular, whether that be valuing, whether that be chasing arrears, whether that be new business, why would you do it yourself? Empower the other person by allowing them to train that individual. Just make a note of who the trainer is. Your learning objectives, with every procedure that you do, you should have learning objectives in there. So you should understand, they should understand what should I know at the end of this? What should I be able to show you that I know as well? Your learning objectives should be documented in there, and ideally what you're looking for is to evidence that. All right, so we have a little circular box, yes or no. Have the learning objectives been met, yes or no? And then a comments box from the trainer and a comments box from the employee as well. And like I say, I know some people say, well, what do I need to put on? I go, have you enjoyed today's session yet? Do you feel good at it yet? Purposely do that, because if I ever need to rely on it, I want to know that they enjoyed it, and I want to know that it's sunk in, because that's a really good document to rely on. And your role profile again, you do need your role profile. Bleating on about the role profile probably a little bit too much, but it is going to sit in your skills matrix also. So moving on, what is a skills matrix? Does anybody know what a skill? Yes.
Quick question just before the training documents, the little
What I
sheet,
call
whatever.
Form 10.
Would you have a different one for each specific process they're being trained in?
It's a blank document. I'll say it's a blank document. It hasn't got text on there. It's just got spaces. So what you tend to have is you'd have a space for a name, a space for a date,
Yeah.
a space for the procedure or coaching type.
Right, okay.
So not everything has a procedure.
Yeah.
So what you might have is an expectation. So what we found is a good example of that is, I am big on customer experiences, customer journeys, customer service, whatever you want to call it. I'm a big believer in it. I know how I feel when I get very good customer service. I love it. I'll go back again. I know how disheartened I feel when I get poor customer service. I assumed, wrongfully, and I think a lot of us are probably guilty of this, we assume or can assume before we start on this journey of management that everybody's like us. And if it's important to me, it's important to you. And why would it not be important? I think one of the things I was absolutely blown away with was at the point that I managed a member of staff who'd been with us for quite some time. And at the point that John took over the branch that I worked in at the time, we were very fragmented in the way that the business operated. So we had a repairs department, we had a referencing department, we had an accounts department, and we had different people that worked in those departments. One of my frustrations was I was new landlord contact. So at the point that a new landlord came on, I nurtured them. I got to understand what they wanted from us. We set some expectations between us. I'd like to say I met those expectations. I worked really well with them. Now they'd go off, I'd let their property for them, wish them well, get a bunch of flowers, a box of chocolates, job's done, fantastic. 6-month cycle, come back to us, very different story. Hello Mr. Smith, I'm ringing you about your property. I understand your tenant's about to move out and just checking in, make sure that nothing's changed. I'm able to get that remarketed for you. Had it entirely different. I don't know if I'm going to use you again. What's gone on? Well, I'm not being happy with this and I've not been... And the general feedback that I tended to receive was that nobody really was focusing on his asset. So you had somebody in accounts and they'd do their little bit, but they wouldn't speak to somebody in that department who did their little bit, so he'd have to repeat himself, and sometimes the transactions were interlinked. So at the point I got them back, I had to work an absolute shift to say, okay then, take your feedback on board, and I'll try and get that changed for you, and let's do this and let's do this. So when John came on board, I kind of just went, boo, and I think this is how it should work, and I think this is why I think it should work like this. John said, that sounds great, that's actually what we're doing in another one of our branches, so it fits in really well. Would you like to manage the branch? Well, yeah, I'll have a bash. So at this point, we made some big changes, and we made Kaylee, who was sat in our repairs department, a portfolio manager, and that was a role that we created. We had Lee, who'd been sat in the accounts department, who became a portfolio manager. And I thought this would be great because I've worked with these people a long time and I know what the frustrations are. And Kaylee hates taking all of the repairs because it's a rubbish job, because all you're ever doing is giving a landlord bad news. I've got to spend some more money. All you're ever doing is getting flack off a tenant about not doing the repairs. She said it's a thankless task. She'll love it. I'm dead excited to tell her I've got this new role and I've earmarked her for it. Same with Lee. Lee's sick of chasing arrears, sick of being told can't afford to feed the kids if you take this rent, all of that nonsense. So I thought they'll be dead excited. they weren't really excitable people, so they weren't particularly excited, but they did kind of look and go, right, okay, I'm open to that. What I had absolutely zero understanding of, what a difficult job that was going to be. Because for me, customer service is easy. It's what everybody should get. For these guys, for some reason, I didn't get it, didn't understand it. And I didn't have a procedure on how you should speak to somebody. I didn't ever think I'd need to write one. And then all of a sudden I was sat with somebody who was very process driven. Sat in our one-to-ones, met our targets, fantastic. Arrears came down, income went up, she got our inspections booked in, hit our numbers targeted fantastically well. But I often got complaints about this member of staff. And don't get us wrong, those complaints were easily rectified, never went any further. But what I found was, I'd speak to these people and I'd say, I'm not very happy with this, I don't want to deal with Kaylee anymore. Okay, what's gone wrong? I'll list this and this. And I'd speak to them on the phone and I'd have a very similar conversation of what Kaylee had with them. My words were the same. The way I said it though was very, very, very different. Kaylee delivered it, but didn't deliver with any form of empathy, didn't deliver it with any form of solutions focused. It was very much a case of, well, I did that, and I made you aware that it was arrears. Right, okay, but I wasn't sure. And in all honesty, she did do all of those things, but what she didn't do is empathise. She didn't say, I'm really sorry that this has happened. I totally understand how you must feel at this moment in time, and I tell you what I'm going to do to try and help you move forward with this. They didn't get that. The result was exactly the same when I delivered it to them, but I delivered it in a completely different way. So all of a sudden I'm faced with somebody kind of, she does all the procedures, she knows what she's doing, but getting all these complaints and people don't want to sit within her portfolio, and I can either keep taking people on myself, which at the time I did, believe it or not. I want to deal with you, Adele. Right, you can deal with me. All of a sudden I'm a portfolio manager with a branch manager title. No, that's no good. I'm working harder, she's working less, who's winning? So what I thought is, she didn't get it, she didn't understand it. Even when I played phone calls, and I think, she's going to hate listening to herself. And at the time, we didn't have recorded calls, but you had the feature with Rightmove where you can sit and listen to the calls. So I thought, right, I'll play a couple of calls to her, she'll understand. Played the calls and I'm thinking, oh, I'm dying for her, this is terrible. Look up at her, what do you think? Decent? Really? Decent? Yeah, I answered everything they asked. Right, okay, they had to ask at one point if you were still there. Hello, you're still there? Yeah, I'm listening. Oh, well, I was listening, I didn't feel the need. One lady rang up, I listened to her in a call, she was double whammy, she was going to be a tenant, but she was also potentially going to be a landlord. She'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness, which was going to mean that she ended up with a physical disability. So she was looking to rent a bungalow, but looking to put her big house on the market also. At the point that she started with, I'm interested in looking at this bungalow in Rose Cottages. All right, okay. The thing is, I've just been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and things are obviously going to be difficult for us, so I'm going to look at this. Yeah, no problem. Where's your house at? So again, played the voice recording, thinking she's going to die. Just didn't get it at all. Didn't get it. And I'm saying, which is what would I have said? I helped her. I organised the viewing. Where was you? I'm really sorry to hear that. Well, I'm not that sorry because I don't really know her. I said, can you imagine how that must feel? Yeah, it must be hard. Can we acknowledge that to the lady then, at least? You might not be sorry, you never met her before, but can you really sorry to hear that, because actually you can empathise with how horrific that must feel? I guess so. Okay, let's do more than guess so. And off the back of that came our customer service charter, which was born. And your business might not need it, because you might have businesses full of somebody like me who gets it and who has to be kicked up the arse to do the paperwork and so on. But if you haven't, and you haven't got those at least rules in place, think about that as well. So think about how do you measure? You should be able to measure every part of your business. Customer service, you've all spoke to us about what your business wants to say, and a lot of you've talked about you want to provide an excellent service. How do your staff know what is an excellent service? How do your staff know what exemplary opposed to standard? We know, because it's common sense to us, not everybody does know, so don't assume. And out of that was born our customer service charter, which made 5 promises. Things like must make every customer feel important, a customer must never ask twice. So, and what we did was, which was really, really good, we formed it as a team. So we came together as a group of managers and said, right, okay, let's set some expectations about, for us, what does service look like? Should we have a standard greeting that everybody gets? Because you can ring this badge and go, hello, Cian. You can ring this badge and go, hello, Intellect Kaylee speaking. You can ring this. Do we actually need to formalise that? So actually anybody coming into contact with us expects this as a very minimum. And for me, that really, really, really changed those staff. And I said to John, when Kaylee went on to leave us, she'd been with us about 10 years. She came straight out of school as an apprentice and we inherited her, which can be very, very difficult as inheriting staff. And you've got to work hard to change the culture and to change the mentality, but it's totally, totally doable. But you need a ton of structure and you need a ton of perseverance. So think about the measuring tools that you've got within your business, not just from a KPI and numbers point of view, but the service that you offer, your expectations and what we offer, yeah? I've whittled on about that, I do apologise. Skills matrix. What is a skills matrix? It's a structure used to evaluate a person's skill set and competencies against a specific role profile. And here's one we made earlier. So you'll see you've got your behaviours and your competencies, and then you've got your key activities. All right, you've got one of these in your book. You've got a score which will be automatically populated at the point that they put whether you're performing or developing. That score will automatically populate. Now what you should do as part of your induction plan is you should know where your expectations lie. So at the end of the 3 month, where do you expect and what's acceptable for you and your business for that person? Where do you expect them to be? All right. Now, the next part of it is where you put your individual learning plan. So your areas of positive performance, successes from your last review. All right. When you're first starting out, that'll be blank because you've got your last review. All right. Your agreed areas of development, you can have that immediately. So you will use this document on day 1. Now I use this document and I ask employees to score themselves. I have no idea how good, bad or indifferent. What you'll find is, which is always interesting, they'll tell you they're absolutely fantastic at interview. Nobody better than do that. What? Sit me down on day 1, I can teach that. When you come to do the skills matrix with them on day 1, they'll underplay it. Yeah, so I said I was brilliant, but I'm going to put myself as developing, really, because, well, I'm not sure how you guys do it yet, so I'm going to, which is fine. Some people will pitch themselves high. From your day 1 of doing your skills matrix, what that will allow you to do is, you've got to give an element of trust into what they're saying. So if they say, for instance, that, let's use one of these examples, positive attitude, I have that in abundance, I'm absolutely fantastic, there's nobody more positive than me. Fabulous. I'm going to score you as performing in that area, which is you're in green, fabulous. I'm not going to spend a lot of time working on that with you because you've told us I can expect to see it. What I do over the next week, month, is I look at validating that. So if I can see that, yes, I agree. So I'll have their initial scoring, and then what I'll do is I'll be scoring them alongside of that. If they've got themselves as performing, solutions and results focused, month 1, give us loads of problems, not a single solution to go alongside it, or actually hasn't hit, I'm probably not wanting to give a great deal of targets in month 1, but if you do give them some little mini targets, I'd like you to book X amount of viewings or whatever it is, and we're not seeing that, you scored yourself as performing, I'm actually going to mark you down to developing, and this is what we're going to do. But what it'll allow you to do is gear your initial induction to what they tell you that they need. Yeah? So again, you're getting that investment in somebody. Again, everything is signed and everything is dated. You've got a copy of this in your book. Went to school, use the skills matrix, day 1, new staff members score themselves. It's carried out after month 1, after month 2, and after month 3. And at that point, you expect to be in a position to sign off their probationary review. I would only do a skills matrix review thereafter every quarter. It can be overkill. Really, at the point that you've chucked all of this new training and development at them, would it be fair to kind of review that and expect some of these things to change? What you'll often find is you get a good member of staff and they're performing in all of those areas. What you need to be thinking about is in month if you do another review 3 months later and they're still performing in all those areas, they're your people that you're going to identify to support you. They're your people, actually, if I've seen brilliant communication skills, I'm going to get you to do this part of the role. I've seen you brilliant at resolving conflict. I'm going to task you with, in order to get you to exceeding in that area, I'm going to task you with dealing with complaints initially. And that's where you start to skill people up to the point that you go, they're ready for promotion, they're ready to take something on. That's how you know someone's not standing still, because that changes.
Do you only get them to score themselves once and
Yes.
then thereafter you do it?
Yes, yeah. There's no reason for them to score themselves beyond that, realistically. It's carried out on a quarterly basis after the initial 3 months. Oh, hold on. Yes. So we've got a little task at the bottom of this, and on page 25, we've got complete a skills matrix on page 25 for a new employee. It doesn't need to be a new employee, it can be any employee. It could be somebody that you're thinking of that you've got problems with at the moment. It could be, now the things that I guess you're going to need to flex with is, there'll be, we've given you an example of key competencies. You're going to have to think, what are your key competencies for that person? What are the key behaviours I want to see from that person? And realistically, don't worry too much about the responsibilities. If it's chasing rent on a daily basis, if it's carrying out valuations, stick those on there and start scoring them. It'll just give you a feel for the structure of it. I'm going to give at least 5 minutes for this, because it is a little bit, 10 minutes I'm going to give at least 10 minutes for this one, because it is a little bit chunkier, and I am going to come round.